Good afternoon. The Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust meeting for December 17th will be in order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the December 3rd meeting. Move approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Are there questions, corrections, additions, comments? Hearing none, voting please. Minutes are approved. Next item is consent docket.
Move approval subject to individual consideration.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Are there items to be discussed separately?
I might point out, I heard Councilman Ryan talking about days added and project changes. We have a couple of unusually large for us days added in items 3E and 3G. 3E is a wastewater treatment plant project where a change in materials that was or materials delivery delay caused an increase in days, and a substantial one, about 15% on the project as a whole. The item G is an interesting project because the project was done on time. We're adding about 200 days to not penalize the contractor because we took beneficial use of the project, but they had some corporate changes that made reaching closeout complicated for them, and again was regretful, but was resolved, and the project was not technically delayed, adding days to not penalize again, since we got beneficial use of the work and it was essentially complete.
Well, my concern about days on the street contracts primarily is what I was interested in, is that was the city being accurate on their forecasted days, or was the contractor given so many days he didn't really feel any sense of urgency to get the projects done? And that has a significantly negative impact on our citizens.
Yes, sir. And particularly these were, in the case of the second project, that was a street project, was street repair related, and getting out of the way of citizens while we built the 42 and 48 water line was important, was accomplished. So a zero-sum game from my perspective in that case, but it's a good reminder for all of us.
Because I've talked to the Public Works Department about changing their methodology somewhat to provide some incentives and some penalties for contractors not moving quickly enough. Because the projects are good projects, and they answer a real need, but the imposition they make on our public sometimes is significant, and we have no way to reimburse people for what's lost businesses and that sort of thing.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And then in a related area, it seems like we've got an awful lot of changes and amendments. Have we done any analysis to see if there was something in our process that caused those to happen? Our engineering being deficient, or we didn't spend enough time on something, or didn't have enough?
Yes. Yeah, it's more than a yes answer, sorry. Yes, we look at it pretty intensely, but we'll bring you a report about that, about what we find. A key thing for us is we want to meet a deadline, and contractors who are reviewing, preparing to bid will identify problems, and so we'll start the job with a change order that we pick up as a part of the bidding process. It's very helpful, clarifies things for everyone, and then later, yes, there are places where we've gotten in a hurry and didn't get materials correct, or made a change in the project. Another thing that can happen is we make a change in the project because the contractor's working in the area doing similar work, and we've identified an emergency that we can get done under the same prices for units. So there are lots of reasons for them. We'll bring you a report about that.
Well, on all the water projects, all the street projects, they're done on an enterprise basis, so there's always changes, there's amendments because of changes that happen in the field. So they've got all these unit prices out there, and so they never match up exactly. In water, it seems to even be a little more fluid because of the fact You'll work with a property owner, and you might move a fire hydrant from one side of the driveway to the other. That doesn't affect us, but he doesn't want the no parking aspect on that side of the driveway. He'd rather have it on the other side of the driveway, and so then there's a change in quantities when that happens. Or you get down the line, and you really, there's a conflict with a gas line until you move the fire hydrant a little bit over, so you got another 3 feet of pipe to get it, to adjust it to get around the utilities, or a sign, or a shrub, or something along those lines. So it always seems that with the water, there's a lot more field adjustments out there on a lot of things, and then we have amendments to come back and reconcile those.
What my concern was, and I wanted to be confident when we talked to the public, that these delays and changes weren't due to any kind of fault that the city could control. We found utilities we hadn't identified, and that sort of thing happens, and I understand that. But the public, I wanted to assure them that the city was being diligent in all its pre-work to make sure the project went as smoothly as possible.
I have just a comment about Ian, or a question. $500,000 for those easements, that seems like a lot of money. Is a water easement of this kind more obtrusive or more something than just normal easements? That's
The easements are acquired based on an estimate, a property evaluation estimate. In this place, we have a very large pipeline going in. He's pointing to item N. We have a large pipeline going in, and it's taking a good deal of space, both temporarily and permanently. Mm-hmm. And there's the very high amount we're paying, and are trying to think about how much money we set aside for easements, and whether we need to relook at where we're planning to put pipelines.
Well, that just caught my eye. That's a lot of money for, when you think of what it costs to build a pipeline, to add just for no longer than that stretch is there, to add $500,000 to the cost just seemed to be higher than normal.
It is. It is higher than normal.
I think you got to take into effect the quality of the land you're following. Open field, that's one thing. If it's a developed area, it's another thing. And if the undeveloped area, does the presence of the easement cause the property not to be as developable? That's probably not such a word, but and so it's hard to say that it's too much or too little on an easement.
Yes.
There are so
in
many
this
variables.
case, we're following
I just
standard procedures to identify the cost, and it was surprisingly high.
A lot of this is
We
over, we're not moving any buildings, or a lot of this is, they're going to be able to use it for the very same thing they used it for once the line's in. I can understand the temporary business disruption and some of that, but when these go in, I looked at this, the businesses that are there are going to be able to do the exact same thing afterward that they're doing now, except they'll have $500,000 in their pocket. Did they receive any benefit from that, from the water, that big water line being there? Are they able to tap into that somehow?
No. No, and that's a part of the opportunity cost for us. We don't allow those large mains to be tapped directly. They have to be tapped on a limited basis, so that if the development intensifies, they'll have great fire protection, but then we'll probably need to build a separate water line system.
Okay, I wondered about that, because, if they were receiving some enhanced benefit, then that would even make it.
Where if we're building a 12 or a 16 or a smaller line that can be tapped, that those easements tend to be less expensive for that reason.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the consent docket. Are there further matters to be considered? Hearing none, voting please. Consent docket's approved. Next is the concurrence docket. There's only a couple of items there.
Second.
A motion and a second on the concurrence docket. Are there matters there to be discussed separately? Hearing none, voting please. Concurrence docket is approved. Next item is items from individual consideration. The first one is to authorize the execution of documents to apply to a couple of government agencies for funds for indoor and outdoor water conservation rebates.
Move approval.
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, voting please. 4A is approved. 4B is concurrence with the, wait a minute, 5B, I'm sorry. 5B, resolution to receive preliminary plans
Move
Copper.
approval. Second.
Second. Questions, concerns? Voting, please. Next item is the Lake Draper report on the boat stalls and construction cost, fee update, and so forth. We're going to have a presentation.
Move we receive the report. Second.
Motion and a second to receive the report. Are there any comments or on it? Hearing none, voting, please. Next item, executive session.
C2, you just approved C1.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, you're right.
My motion should be amended to receive the report and approve the resolution, Chairman.
We have a second for that.
I'll second.
Any comments, questions? Voting, please. C1 and 2 are now approved. Now, D is the executive session concerning the lawsuit concerning Sardis. Do we need to do executive session?
Yes, sir, we do.
Second.
Motion and a second to move to executive session. So moved. Next item is item from trustees. Any comments from trustees?
Just a question, Mr. Chairman. When a citizen signs up to take water service from Oklahoma City, is there a contract that he acknowledges the right of the city to put regulations on the use of that water in place?
In the last set of ordinance changes that we recommended, we upgraded our ordinances. Our ordinances comprise our contract and our relationship with our customers. That has been in place since the mid-'80s, but we recently upgraded those when we looked at conservation issues. It was one of the ordinances that came through Aqua and City Council.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Trustees? General manager reports. Status report from the department.
Mr. Chairman, just very quickly, lake levels remain in about the same place they were the last time we saw this report. Lake Canton remains down. Overholser and Hefner have dropped a little bit because it's been a dry fall. That's pretty normal. And Lake Atoka remains down despite pumping in from McGee Creek Lake. We're doing our best to balance those lakes, but it, again, is an unusually dry period through the fall. And long-range forecast is for a surprisingly warm winter after these last couple of weeks, and a normal rainfall returning. We're looking forward to that. We'll keep you updated. As you know, those forecasts always change. We've been pretty fortunate in the total number of new customers that we've collected. We're approaching 4,000 for this year, which is a good high, about 2% number, 1% number. Yeah.
Any questions? We will go to executive session. Oh, I'm sorry. Citizens to be heard. No citizens. Now we'll go to executive session.